Relational proximity. Now, that might sound like fancy words for something that doesn't need to be that fancy. This is the way I think, this is the way I process stuff. So, this one's just of my own head. This is not Keith Drury or Patrick Lencioni or anyone else, but I found this to be eminently useful, especially in the pastoral ministries, but it is useful for every single life, trying to maximize not just productivity, but maximizing your responsibilities in this life. And so the relational proximity is a chart. It's an x-axis and a y-axis. And so in many ways, on one of those axes is the significance of the event. So if the event is something like a stubbed toe versus a senior recital versus the birth of a child or the death of a loved one, the significance of that event gets charted. You could do it horizontally, you could do it vertically. It doesn't much matter, the x-axis or the y-axis. So the significance of the event. Then the other axis, the y-axis, becomes the relational proximity. You could define this in a different way if you want, of the relational responsibility that you have to this individual. So everyone is of equal worth, everyone is equally loved of God, and so God is infinite and able to love everyone equally all at the same time, and his son died for all people. Yes, all that is true. And we're called to love our neighbor as ourselves. That is also true. But what is not true is that we're called to love in action, in deed, in an equal way for every human being on the face of the earth. There's over 8 billion people. There's no way you have sufficient time, let alone resources, to do that. What you're called to, though, is to love your neighbor as yourself. And neighbor is a way of describing those who come near, those who are near to you. The nearness, to some degree, is what mandates your response. Now, sometimes the nearness is defined by relationship, as in your own child, your own spouse, your own small group, your own friend group, your extended family and friends, all those sorts of people, strangers, foreigners, enemies, all of those sorts of things, although I'm going the wrong direction, I just realized with those. The nearer they are to you, the more responsibility you have for them. So, for instance, the scriptures say that he who doesn't provide for his family has denied the faith and is worse than a pagan. In a positive way, in Proverbs it says that a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children. And so, the way I utilize this chart in my own head, and I don't actually have a printed out chart, I don't have it graphed somewhere, but what I do to discern what my response should be is what is the significance of the event and what is the significance of the relationship. Because everyone is equally significant, but not every relationship is equally significant. So, personally, let's say I have my child stubs their toe, a small group member stubs their toe, somebody that happens to live in the same community stubs their toe, somebody on the other side of the globe stubs their toe. So now we've limited the variables. It's a simple equation of which relationship has greater proximity to me. Which one do I bear more responsibility for? And obviously, I wouldn't even be aware of the person on the other side of the globe. I wouldn't even be aware of the person in the same community in all likelihood, unless I happen to see it, in which case my proximate location might require a greater response. Small group. But my child, now my child stubs their toe, especially when they're young and they're crying. I in all likelihood, I'm going to pick them up and comfort them, console them, and then we'll go on about our way. Now, if it's a child stubbing a toe, let's say that's a 1, but the relationship's an 8, so you could think of that as an 8 significance. And then I have a parishioner who's in the hospital, and that's like a I don't know, a 6 or 7. Let's give that a 7 significance. And they're a parishioner of mine, so they're not just an enemy, a foreigner, a stranger, a community member. They're actually somebody that I have a relationship with and responsibility to. Let's say that's a 5. And so then you've got a 5, 7, 35 beats 8. And so it's not to treat people callously like they're a number. But what it does is it helps me to not ignore my family all the time because the events aren't as significant as the people in my congregation are going through events. Because the reality is, for pastors, and also for people in charge of other organizations, is that if you go solely on the significance of the event, the people most important to you will not be most important to you. At least they will certainly not feel it, because you're ignoring them time and time and time again. This is one of the reasons why there are so many divorces in the ministry. It's because the pastor, normally male, is having an affair on his wife with the church. And I don't mean he's actually physically having an affair, but I mean that he values the church by how he spends his time more than his own wife. So his wife's one, twos, and threes, those daily events that need attention, need care, need his attention, love, and affection, aren't getting them, because the people in his congregation are having four or fives and sixes, and if there's 150 of them, then the occasional becomes the common. And so every day there's a four, five, or six that he needs to deal with, and because he forgets about the relational proximity axis, his wife feels unloved and uncared for, and his children grow up to hate the church. Now, this is not equally true, but it is also true of anyone in any occupation, anywhere. Consider how significant the relationship is in conjunction with how significant the event is, and then schedule your time accordingly so that you are not a pagan and worse than an unbeliever.